Everybody, let us begin. Rithvik, hi there. Welcome in the chat. I hope you are doing well today. I hope everybody is doing as well as can be, given 2020 rages on. We salute everybody that has made it this far in the Hunger Games. I'm doing well, thank you. I just saw friends this morning online, so I like to see friends spread out around the world. We get together for coffee in the morning, and then I just did. I got a kettlebell. Everybody knows, of course, like kettlebell sold out very early on this year, but they've started to come back into stock, and so I got a kettlebell. But because so many kettlebells are still, it's so much like weightlifting equipment, the lighter versions are out. So I could only get a kettlebell that's like pretty heavy. So I'm like, fine, we're just gonna do it. We're just gonna do heavy kettlebell workout. So I just did a kettlebell workout. I can feel I am still kind of sweaty. I did the workout, hopped in the shower, grabbed some food quickly, but I'm still, when like the body gets going, just like our brain does when we're working on mental health exercises, same too with the body. So I can still feel it. So it's a great time now that the body is ready. I saw friends, the brain is ready. Let us come together as a community now, take out our squishy urge blobs and figure out what's going on with them. Because usually when we think there's something going wrong with the brain, it's actually exactly the way the brain was designed to work. So let's talk about that. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, I feel, it's getting into the fall. We're getting a bit cozy now. So we're running a cozy beard today. This is about as long as I'll let it get. So Luca, hello. Everybody, yeah, feel free. Start throwing questions in the chat. We'll get this conversation going. Thank you to everybody too that posts questions over on Instagram. I will answer all of those questions over there as well. How is everybody? A thing, speaking of cozy, I'll throw this out to everybody. I mean, we can share tips with each other. I was just talking about this with some friends of mine, thinking ahead. So here, of course, it's coming into winter now. And so we are just coming back into another big spike of COVID cases. And so we're looking at a winter that's probably going to be very locked down. So I find it's when you see that coming, like knowing, okay, winter's coming. A lot of us, as we come into winter, of course, winter happens at different times around the world. But as we come into winter, a lot of people will struggle more with their mental health. So I find it's a great time to talk about how do we proactively prepare for a winter so that it's a positive experience for us, that it's actually an opportunity to not just struggle and suffer, but actually thrive. How do we make the winter enjoyable, particularly if we're going to be spending a lot of time at home alone? So I'm really right now planning, because it's just October here, right? It's quite nice. The weather is beautiful, very easy to go outside. But yeah, planning for a winter that could be very cold, very wet, not sunny, not that, and also we're not going outside because of the pandemic. So I'm really taking time to think about, like, how do I plan for a cozy winter? How do I make it enjoyable? What resources are going to help me do that? So I'm not then like stuck in the winter and then like, oh, I really wish I could get this thing that would help me. But of course, because things are low on stock, etc., it's not available. So that was one of the reasons getting a kettlebell now, as soon as they came into stock, right? So I do have something I can use to work out with when I'm stuck at home this winter. One thing I'm doing, everybody, you're welcome to hop in on this. Because I was thinking, that I'll miss food and like trying different foods and things like that. So one thing I'm doing this winter is I'm collecting gourmet instant noodles. So, instant noodles from Korea, Japan, Taiwan, getting like really interesting instant noodles. And then maybe, each week I'll do a special. I got a big bowl too that I had to get. I didn't have a good ramen bowl. So I've got a good noodle bowl that's on the way. And then so I can just sit down and enjoy an interesting bowl of noodles. So that's one of the activities I'm going to practice this winter to just enjoy being cozy. So I don't know, yeah, if anybody has any ideas there on how are you going to make the winter go well? How are you going to be cozy and enjoy that time? But I see there's a bunch of questions in the chat, so let's dive into those. Victor, you said you want to be in a relationship, but the mind says, you don't feel like it. And then you get stuck. Any tips? Don't listen to your brain. Totally useless. As you can see, it'll always do that. Like, oh, I want to go do this thing. And then it'll be like, oh, here's a reason not to do it. Like, that's what this stuff is all about. It helped me so much to see that I should not listen to my brain. And you can see it. It'll just get in the way of the things we really want to do. Sick. I hope you're doing better. I'm good at not doing mental compulsions while doing exposures for ERP practice. However, during the day, moment to moment, I end up doing mental compulsions about the things that aren't obsessions. So I would call this out. So that's not ERP. Actually, and even I was impressed the other day because I was going to do a video on this. So I was researching actually if you look up exposure therapy in Wikipedia, it actually calls out one of the key differences between exposure therapy and ERP being that ERP is not like you don't do exposures exercises like as like a distinct thing. ERP is like you've cut out the compulsion period throughout your life. And I thought it was really great they emphasized that because, yeah, I see this a lot. Usually what people are talking about on like online forums like Reddit or something like that, or even you see people talking on social media like, oh, I'm doing my exposures. They're talking about exposure therapy. That is not ERP. If you're doing ERP, you've cut out the compulsion. So it would be cut out during your everyday life, right? So one way of approaching ERP is really thinking about like, it's like I am cutting out one compulsion this week. So it's not, because if you're just isolating it into a particular exercise, like, oh, now is the time I'm going to expose myself to this thing and that's going to make anxiety go away. I see that as a compulsion. Like I would ask, how is that different from saying, oh, I'm going to take a half hour each day to do a special prayer ritual that is going to make anxiety go away or make intrusive thoughts go away, right? Then I'm just taking up time in my life to try to avoid and control mental experiences. So I would like so you're seeing that there. So ERP would be going after those moment to moment compulsions. That's what we go after. So tackle those. How this week are you going to cut out those compulsions in your everyday life? And so I'll just start with one. Be like, look, this week I'm not gonna do this compulsion anywhere, anytime, anyhow, no matter what my brain says. Rithvik, you asked, is the only way to release the lock of anxiety acceptance of the worst case scenario? No, like I would always watch out for any kind of like like listening to our brains. They love to get caught up in this very rigid thinking, like the only way to do it is this, you must do this. And then it becomes a big challenge for us because maybe like we can't do that right now. So we're like, oh, I can't do the thing. Therefore, oh, it's all wasted or something like that. But I would say like, if you're not accepting the worst case scenario, maybe in that you're seeing lots of compulsions that might be useful to cut out. Yeah, so like why? One thing that really helped me is seeing it as like mental health and mental fitness. So mental fitness is a great example. Speaking of heavy, I can see my kettlebell over there, just waiting to get picked up again. But I know how heavy it is. But like in mental fitness, like physical fitness, it's about wanting to pick up anything. So yeah, if that weight may be really difficult right now. So, this winter I'm going to do a lot of exercises to make that weight not so heavy. And that'll be about, picking it up and doing things with it. Literally picking it up and carrying it places. And so that's often what we do to show the brain, okay, we don't have to be afraid of this like worst case scenario anymore. Yeah, it's a thing. And look, here are other things I actually want to give my time and energy to. Becky? Oh, Bach. Sorry, my computer went by very quickly there. Bach, it's welcome, Bach. Huge fan of your work. So how can we build healthy habits while suffering from puro and coping with lockdown? Every time I try anything mentally demanding, intrusive thoughts tend to jump in and distract me. So right there, I would start to look at how it might be useful to not get stuck on the puro label, because that distracts you. Like, that's the compulsion. It's like, think of it like this. When the brain throws up a thought, it's like somebody shouting in the street. So somebody shouts something in the street, like they say, "You're an alligator." And then I stop what I'm doing to go and shout out the window, "No, I'm not an alligator." That's the compulsion, right? A thing popped up. I then left the thing that I want to do to go and argue with the random person in the street. And that's what we do when we are distracted, right? And I could blame them. I could say, "Oh, like that person out there, they shouldn't say things." That distracts me from my work. But actually, we want to take back the power there. That person's not distracting me. They're doing the thing that they do, just like our brain. Our brain is going to throw up stuff, just like our gut throws out farts. Fine, it makes noises, whatever. But if we attach meaning to that, like, "Oh no, my gut, it just gurgled. What's that mean? Am I going to die?" Or if somebody out in the street says, "You're an alligator," and we're like, "Oh no, why did they say that? Does that mean I am an alligator? I must go and defeat them." That's where we run into trouble. So we've got to be like, okay, there's stuff, and I want to give my time and energy to the things that I care about. And that's a choice I get to make. So we want to take back that power. Yeah, I'm going to have experiences, but what do I want to choose to do? So in that, you may see that's where we see like things like judging compulsions and beliefs. Like, for example, if I believe that people shouldn't say I'm an alligator, then I'll probably want to argue with the person in the street that says I'm an alligator. If I believe I need to prove them wrong, then I will probably stop doing the thing I'm doing and I'll go and fight with them. If I'm also judging that as important. And so that's part of this in terms of not listening to our brains. It really helped me to start to emphasize that the stuff that comes up in my brain is not important. I don't have to believe any of it. And as part of that, it helped me to see that I was often believing the stuff in my brain that I liked. So if my brain, if the person in the street shouted, "You're really smart," I'd be like, oh, person in the street, I like you, you're so great. But by doing that, I'm teaching my brain that, what the person in the street says is valid and real. So then when the person in the street says, "You're an alligator," I have to be like, "Oh no, but that's the person in the street and I believe them." Then I have to go and argue with them. So yeah, really look, like when we get stuck on this idea of puro, I'd look at thoughts more generally. Like, are you believing thoughts when they say things you like? If so, then it becomes very stressful to ignore thoughts you dislike. Luca said, "I would love to talk about this new normality." Yes, as you're introducing. Yes, this is a very unusual time, isn't it? But now it's very normal. He said, "As a mental health professional myself, in London, it has been 3 days of rain straight." So you have a noodle bowl to recommend. You just bought an astonishing 990 pound self-heating noodles bowl. Oh wow! So like the bowl actually heats the noodles. That's amazing. You recommend it. The brand is, here's a shout out. They have not sponsored us. See, is this a Heidi Lau? There we go. Self-heating noodle bowl. Everybody, shout out to the bowl engineers of the world. Thank you, Luca. Golestento Flaming Lips. You asked, any tips for so Fizzle, thank you. Cheers to you. Any tips for those who are trying to beat anxiety, but also suffer from an annoying illness on top of it? In my case, IBS. which gets in the way of a normal routine. It can be really interesting. You'll see a lot of research trying to figure out if there's a connection between IBS and anxiety. Because people will often experience them together, but then so far when we look at them in studies, often they'll not find a connection. But it's very, very common that you see this pair coming up. So one thing that I find really important to recognize is that the IBS, and this will go for a lot of different health issues. So say pain, like any kind of chronic pain is a great example of this as well. That it's about noticing how that puts us into this kind of on guard approach. Maybe we are actually having to check things. We are having to like look at food labels and be like, oh, is this going to create problems that I'm then going to have to deal with, and so on. And so it can put us in that reactive position. And so one of the things I find really important with this, and this comes back to the idea of taking back power, is to find how we can get proactive with it. So part of it being like, okay, like how, like this is a thing that can happen, but how do I actually fuel doing things well? And making that okay, just like we would with some kind of chronic pain issue, like maybe I can't go and do something today that I want to go and do. And so like learning how to make that okay and say, oh, actually like not doing that is actually taking care of my health. And so, okay, I'm not going to do that thing today. That's going to give me some energy that I can then use tomorrow to do something else that I want to do. But also something that I see coming up a lot, and this is why it's also useful to approach it from a perspective of like, how do I nourish myself well? How do I fuel myself well versus how do I avoid the IBS? Is that we can get caught up then in maybe doing compulsions around food that actually we don't need to, but also doing compulsions around our body where actually maybe we could go and do a thing. And so it's part of it is, and this is an exploration for you, part of it is figuring that out. Like where is it healthy for me to push on my body and my brain? And where is it actually healthy for me to pull back? And starting to develop a system for that that's outside of our heads. Because often we'll be in a moment and the brain will be like, oh, reasons, you can do that, go and eat that, that's fine. And then we feel terrible after. And then in other situations, maybe we want to go and do something, but the brain's like, ooh, but what if your IBS came up while you were doing that? Then, that would be bad, right? So you shouldn't do that. And then we don't do it. So finding that plan for how do we fuel doing things well, and then using that to see when do we push on the brain, and when do we actually not listen to the brain. I wish you the best with that exploration. I think that too is an approach that can apply to anybody dealing with any kind of body health issue. Finding that system that works for you becomes so important, because the brain is just so often, this goes back even to what Rithvik asked about earlier, like they want to be, wants to be in a relationship and the brain's like, oh, you can't do that right now. And then other times the brain will be like, oh, be in a relationship with that person, obsess about them. And it's actually, that person's not healthy for us, right? Like we see the brain pushing us into unhealthy relationships. So finding that system, right? Because the brain, it's kind of useless. So when do we listen to the brain? When do we not? Justin, I think so. I was just talking about that with my friend. We do have to share about our favorite noodles. I'll keep you posted on my instant noodle exploration. And I'll let you know which noodles are the best noodles to winter with in the world. I'm hearing from everybody in the UK. Young Desi, Luca was mentioning that as well. You're dealing with a lot of rain, eh? It's about, how do we handle that? Like being able to notice those experiences that come up. And again, maybe it's like we do less during that time and making it be okay. Being like, okay, I don't feel like I can do as much today. So I'm not going to hate on myself. What can I do in those situations? KD said, I had bad OCD over 10 years ago, have been managing really well. following tips and techniques. But all the talk about COVID has made me really anxious. Is this enough to go back to CBT, do you think? The thing, and this is kind of like what we were just talking about there, I find it super important with mental health to not make it about solving a problem. It's just like physical fitness. It should be a thing that we're constantly doing to build skills and do more of the things we want to do in life. We don't want to, like, mental health skills are just healthy skills. We don't want to make the prerequisite for them a disaster. So I would say, like, that's one of the reasons I like acceptance commitment therapy. The concepts and the skills of acceptance and commitment are not for illness and disaster. You can absolutely use them in that scenario, but they are really important all of the time. That's one of the reasons too I like that community of mental health professionals, because there's a big emphasis put on the fact that any of the professionals practicing it must have an active practice in their life right now, because it's not about fixing a problem. It's about doing things well. So how do we thrive? The same way, so yeah, like thinking about, the winter coming up, how are you going to thrive? And that'll be about like how you handle uncertainty, how you handle the stuff in your head, how you experience unwanted feelings or thoughts and choose to do the things that are useful to you. And those skills are going to be always helpful to us. Pam, yes, I'm finding you don't have to chase every stick your brain throws at you. Advice very helpful. Oh, enjoy not chasing those sticks, especially when the inevitable less than great things happen in life. Oh, thank you. Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad you're finding that helpful. I find that really important too. Like this idea of just not listening to our brains. Yeah, it's gonna throw out stuff. You do not have to chase it. You can just notice it. Like, oh, there's my brain. Being a brain again. It's such a brain. And then you see it and you're like, I have better things to do right now than chase after my brain. Tanisha, hi. Let's see here. I'm just scrolling down. Hello to everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Politics Radio. I said not to ask anything. I just want to tell you've helped me so much with understanding OCD and understanding how to actually live by values. Oh, I'm glad you found these tools useful. Yeah, this is, so I wish this stuff had been around, years before I had kind of crashed and burned. So yeah, I'm really glad that we can share this community and talk about these tools. And yeah, learn how to handle this stuff and move past it. It's so weird that this stuff isn't talked about more, that we're not introduced to mental fitness when we're kids the way we're introduced to physical fitness. Like, that's just part of what we learn. Yeah, so cheers to working on this stuff together. Little Miss Beats, yeah, he said, this may not be a compulsion, but I've been working on not scratching itches. I have bad allergies, so it's all day itching. It's been hard, but also interesting to notice all the feels, and it goes away after a while, even without scratching. Yes. So I find this is such a useful area to explore, and this is where we get into how this stuff is really for anybody. And we want to tackle these patterns around things we see as normal, and so itching is a great example. This is why if you're doing the meditation practice, you probably see me talk about, or it's on my channel, the meditation practice is about curiosity, where you sit and you don't move. And it's precisely to work on this because, yeah, an itch is no different than anything else the brain can throw up, right? The itch doesn't exist there. The itch is a signal in the brain going, do something about this thing. And so learning how to be like, oh yeah, there's an uncomfortable experience. I'm not going to do anything about it, right? I don't have to chase that stick. And the brain learns, like you see right there, like an itch is no different than an intrusive thought. And so if it pops up and you're like, yep. So what, brain? It's like the person shouting in the street. I'm like, okay, yeah, you say I'm an alligator. That's neat. You know, that person is going to walk away to go and find somebody who does react to them. Or that itch is going to go away because the brain's like, oh, you don't react to an itch. So it learns, yeah, with all of this stuff. So understanding those patterns, because yeah, most people would scratch an itch, right? We see that as normal, but it is just an example of an unwanted experience that we react to. And so if we can learn how to have something like that and not react to it, we can then take that same principle and apply it to other things, which is really neat. Justin, yes, do you have any tips for committing to an exposure? Oh, is this like Say Yes to the Dress? I've never watched the show, but I've heard of it. I find I often have a tendency to distract myself during one, thinking of other things, or subconsciously avoiding feeling the exposure. Wait, Justin, did you, oh no, that was different. So right there, I would just ask, like, what are you thinking of as an exposure? And are you cutting out the compulsions? Like with that idea of committing to an exposure, like I would commit to changing the action. That if you're just trying to commit to, I don't know, exposing yourself to something, I wouldn't necessarily know what the purpose of that is. But if it's about changing an action, that's what I would commit to. You're like, I am going to, you know, walk past this thing that I always avoid, but I'm going to walk past it because I want to go and do this thing that's important to me. And so I would commit to that, commit to the thing you value and doing it, and then go for it. Little Miss Beats, following up on the scratch thing. Yeah, you point out here that if you scratch, you're super mindful about it. You make a decision to scratch instead of just being reflexive. That is so awesome. Yeah. And so here you're asking, is that a common exercise that translates into other areas? Yes. Even there is a meditation exercise I heard about recently, which sounds fantastic to try out. You sit down, and so for the first, say you do like for the first 5 minutes, let yourself just react reflexively, move, scratch, whatever. But then, so how, you set up a timer that'll have a bell. So like you can do this with Insight Timer. Set up a bell at 5 minutes. When that bell goes, for the next 5 minutes, choose. So just make sure that like you notice it. Like, okay, there's a thing here. Okay, I am going to choose to scratch. I'm going to choose to move. Like bring that power back. So you're not just chasing after whatever the brain throws up. Bring the power back to you. You're only going to choose to do it. And then because we start to show the brain, like I am in charge here. And then you have another bell that's set, goes off at another 5 minutes. Now, don't move at all. And it's just so interesting to start to learn that there are these 3 different ways of interacting with the brain stuff. Right? You can be very reflexive, just chase after everything the brain throws up. Or you can notice stuff and choose to do it. Like, I'm in charge, I choose to do this. Or you can notice all of this stuff and do nothing. And it's really great to start to see that. Like there are these options. It isn't just that we're automatic with everything. We can make choices. So absolutely, that sounds like a really great exercise to pursue. King Kirby, what can I do if I fear that constant ERP acceptance and refusing to react at a thought is becoming a compulsion of its own? Yeah, so, you know what? So that's perfect. Like I would recommend that exercise that I just explained, that Little Miss Beats was describing, like sort of like try out a meditation exercise of like seeing like, okay, what's it like if I just react automatically to everything? What's it like if I choose what I react to? And what's it like if I don't react to anything? And just starting to explore that stuff. But also what I would say, and this is one of the ways that stuff often becomes a compulsion, is we have to build mental fitness around the things that we want to do more of in life. Think of swimming and drowning. You don't say like, I'm fighting drowning, and like every week I'm gonna go and take lessons to fight drowning. No, like it's about swimming. And so like, how do I swim better? What are different strokes that I can use? Like what works well for me? What are exercises that can build those skills that I want to use, that I want to be good at? And so approaching it that way, because yeah, if we just approach this like, this is a bad thing and I need to fight it, then yeah, it quickly becomes a compulsion and we're just always fighting and fighting and fighting. Young Desi is a classic approach, CBT, about changing thoughts and feelings. That sounds very unhealthy. Yeah, and like the thing is, CBT has changed over time. And so yeah, if you, I describe it like one thing, like the idea of a thought record, where, you know, you're gonna, that would be like a very traditional CBT. But of course, it's like everything. Like even if you look back at physical fitness in the 80s, it looks very different from physical fitness now. And yeah, like there are some basics elements there that of course get carried on. You know, like running doesn't look that different from running did back in the 80s, but the way we work out actually does. Like you'll find a lot of interesting techniques that are incorporated into running that you didn't see back then. And the same happens with therapy. We learn better ways of doing things. We have a much more active patient community now, right? So we have people like us getting together that talk about what actually works well and what doesn't. So yeah, just like there's like a fitness community that builds up over time, and people share things. So yeah, I mean, if a therapist was doing like really old school CBT, like people should kind of look at that like, I don't know, somebody who's just into really old school, I don't know, like aerobics, like the kind of aerobics videos that used to be on television. It's like that. That's what I always think about. Jato, yes, is your OCD 100% cured? So first of all, it is not definitely did not belong to me. I don't struggle with any of the mental illness diagnoses I had. But yeah, like this idea that, like that mental illnesses are chronic and all of that kind of stuff, it just, there's no basis for it. It's 100% myth. If you want to get over this stuff, it's totally possible. Like that's just, it really is like thinking of it like physical fitness too. Like I would never, like even the idea of cured is kind of showing that unhelpful way of approaching it. It'd be like asking if somebody has cured their drowning. I mean, in theory, anybody could drown. We just like, hold them underwater. But do they know how to swim? Like, do they look at water and they're like, oh, I can get into that and swim? Yeah, like we need to take a similar approach with mental health. I absolutely could go back to mental illness, but I would have to do that. Like I would have to choose to do all sorts of really unhealthy things. And so you could not pay me enough to start doing all of that stuff again. Commodore 64, classic computer. Could you explain the difference between leaning into uncomfortable thoughts without buying into them? Can you explain a bit more of what, maybe give an example of where you find you're running into challenges with that, and like we can dive right into the specifics of it. Wimsum, good afternoon. Big secret, you said, I am hyper aware about temperature. Oh, the heater is right here beside me. I always get anxious during summer. I can't get rid of thinking about it. Do you have a question about that? Astrid, good morning. I'm Peruvian. Can you please put subtitles in your videos? I speak Spanish. Yes. So a bunch of them do have Spanish subtitles. And then, so unfortunately, YouTube just ended the community subtitle thing. So a bunch do have subtitles. And then, yeah, the more popular ones that don't have Spanish subtitles, I will hire somebody to do the Spanish subtitles for them. So yeah, but check out like a lot of like Spanish is one of the most common languages that there are subtitles for in a lot of the videos. So do make sure that like you've checked the subtitle button, but absolutely, I know there's a lot that don't have Spanish subtitles. So I will get those made. United, what do you do when you encounter a situation in life that causes anxiety that is very hard to lift? What would you mean by being too hard to lift? Yeah, I would do the exact same as I would with like a weight. Like we're talking there about having a heavy weight. And so one, recognizing it's totally normal. Like you go into the gym, there's probably lots of weights you can't lift. So like, let's say you go in and, you know, your deadlift is like 200 pounds right now. And so you try to pull the 300 pounds, be like, oh, I cannot do this. It is physically impossible to do it right now. But then, so you set that as a goal, and you're like, okay, well, how do I break that down into smaller things I'm going to do each week? How am I going to fuel doing that? Because there's probably a lot of changes I have to make in other areas of my life. Like if I want to start pulling 300 pounds on the deadlift or something, and I'm only at 200 right now, I'm probably going to change my diet a lot. I'm going to eat so much rice to do that. But then also like keep in mind, you go into the gym, yeah, maybe you're struggling with 300 pounds right now, but you'll see lots of people doing, say, 500 pounds. Again, recognizing that, like that didn't just like magically happen to that person. They've been working on that and progressively building up those skills, and that's what we've got to do with mental fitness too. So not take it as some kind of big deal. We see it and we're like, okay, that's difficult right now, so I'm going to start making changes so I can get there. John, can you explain what you mean by social perfectionism? Oh, Ben. Hey, Ben. Thank you for joining. It's good to see you. Yeah, Ben, welcome. Part of the community. Ro, I said you're suffering like hell. I am so opposed to motivation, but if you're coming to take motivation, I mean, for now, we'll say that's okay. The noob gamer said how to cut out compulsions about masturbation. Like when I feel that it was not satisfying, then I do it over and over and never feel satisfying. That is the compulsive pattern right there. Right? Like just like if you check the door lock to feel safe, the brain will make you feel unsafe. So you check the door lock again. It really helped me to see that taking care of our mental health is about making this big switch from getting to giving. And so you'll always see when we're doing these unhelpful compulsions, we're trying to get stuff. We're really trying to like get feelings, like get satisfaction, for example. And that's always gonna, and that's the thing, that's always gonna create exactly what you're experiencing there. So if you're trying to get satisfaction, so then you're doing lots of checking compulsions, like comparing feelings and judging them, it's always 100%, 123% guaranteed to give you the opposite of the feeling you are chasing. So it can really, and so this is even with things like masturbation. To approach it is like, yeah, I'm not just like the brain's gonna throw up some feeling and I'm gonna chase it and try to get some feeling. Start to think about like, what's it like to give? Now, what's it like to do that based around something you choose to do versus you just chasing after something random your brain threw up because you're trying to get something. Oh, my thing just went, my computer went wild. Computers, technology, computers are like brains. They're just always doing stuff. Just throw them out. Do Commodore 64. Could you maybe talk about the difference between leaning in? So that was that question. Actually, maybe you were just repeating it there, but could you explain maybe a bit more specifically what you mean? Oh, so maybe here you go. So could you maybe talk about when to disregard the brain versus leaning into it? Sometimes when I try to disregard it and just let the thoughts be there, I feel, oh, so this is it. I feel like I'm avoiding. So this idea of avoiding, the brain is the distraction. And starting to see that, like, I think we get so hooked because we've spent so much time giving up our lives to chasing brain stuff that we then to step away from it, we feel like that's the compulsion, but no, like we want to give our time and energy to living our lives. That's because if we've spent our entire life arguing with the person in the street, and then we get, oh no, like if I don't argue with them, am I avoiding them? No, like it was always the distraction. And starting to see, no, like I want to do the things that I really care about, and I'm going to give my time and energy to that. Look at that, Wanderson. Thank you. See, people throw up a request. People requested the beard. It exists. Look at that. That's fan service. Flomo, what if I hate the things I value? For example, I'm really into healthy food and love fresh vegetables. Fresh vegetables are wonderful, but find it boring and exhausting being in the garden. I love a clean house, but don't like cleaning. Yeah, so this is actually where a lot of the work comes in. And this is where you get in, like a question I'll often pose to coaching clients is just like, how do you enjoy something? And also recognizing, so the thing that really helped me, it's useful to me to like the things that are useful to me. But we often, from years of practice, we dislike them. And so actually like looking at that stuff, like, so if you see that you really like a clean house, it's going to be useful to you to like cleaning. So what compulsions are you doing while you're cleaning that are not useful to you? Right? Like if you're like, oh, I don't like this is boring. Oh, there's nothing to do. Oh, like all of that stuff, all of those judgments and the hating that's going on, you don't have to do that stuff. So same with gardening. It's really useful to learn how to appreciate a pile of dirt. We often approach that stuff right now as like, oh, that's boring, that's stupid, I don't like that, etc. Is that useful to you? Like, what is useful to you to do in your brain? We so often like doing the things that are not useful to us and dislike doing the things that are useful to us. And so what really helped me was starting to look at that outcome, like you're already doing that, but you're seeing, oh, actually, I really like it when it's clean. And so starting to find how, okay, so if I like that outcome, that means I do like the things that lead to that outcome. This is something we see in all sorts of places with fitness, with mental health work, right? If we want the outcome, that means we also like practicing the things that will take us there. But maybe right now we're doing lots of compulsions around that stuff, right? So what kind of changes do we make there, right? How do you like something? How do you enjoy something? Leah X, hi. How do you determine if health anxiety is due to OCD or anxiety? There's no difference. I mean, these, like, talk about health things, right? Like the mental illness, like diagnoses, labels, they're just made up by committees. Like they don't exist outside of a book. They don't exist. Like there's nothing in your brain where you go, oh, health, oh, OCD. Like there aren't compartments or things like that. So I always encourage people to look at, like, how do we spend our time and energy? Because it does not matter. And even like, so the idea of health anxiety is a great example to look at. So if somebody said, oh, I have OCD, and you'll see this a lot. Say, oh, I have OCD about door locks. I have health anxiety that makes me like research on Google and go to get lots of tests. And then also I have borderline personality disorder that makes me like try to control relationships. Same thing, right? The brain throws up a worry, right? A thing we don't like. What if the door's unlocked? What if somebody's going to attack you? We go and we check the door, right? Get reassurance. This bad thing won't happen. Then the brain is like, oh, what if you have this illness? What if that feeling inside of you right now, that means there's like some cancer there. You better go research symptoms online, right? So again, exact same compulsion. Bad thing, intrusive thought pops up. We're like, oh no, I better get rid of that, better solve that. And then we do the compulsion. Same thing, then like BPD. We're like, what if that person abandons you and they're actually like doing something terrible to you? Quick, lash out at them first, get rid of them so that we don't experience that bad thing. Same thing again. Oh no, this bad thing could happen. Okay, I will do this bad thing to control it and get rid of it. Get reassurance. I better check and make sure they like me, right? Same thing as Googling about a symptom online, same compulsion as going to check the door. So it can really help to take that step back from the label and look at like, what am I doing in my life? And the great thing about that is that like we can change that. We can notice that stuff the brain throws up, recognize, oh, this is just the bad thing of the week that my brain is worrying about. I don't have to chase after that. what is a more valuable thing to me? What's a more useful thing to me to do instead? Miles, I don't know if I'd go for the huge beard. Seems it could be a lot of work. You gotta have like maybe you gotta have like a thing, but maybe it would save work. Right now, like I always have to like shave every day. Derek, yes, what do you like about the silent illumination technique? How do you suggest a beginner to practice this? Oh, Derek, so on the toolkit site, there's the basics of being course, the last lesson now. So I just uploaded earlier last week another section. So we could say this is like round 2, and the last lesson in the second round is an introduction to just sitting. And so it explains kind of the process that I like to use to get into that silent illumination technique. The thing I love about it is that kind of like a lot of what we're talking about, so much of what people are doing when they're struggling with their mental health is giving lots of time and energy to the stuff happening in the brain. And really like, okay, brain, I'm going to notice thoughts. Like, what are we going to notice now? There's a lot of engaging with it. And what we do with the silent illumination technique is we shut up the brain. It's silent. And that silent in the term silent illumination refers to your brain. It is silent. And that, I'm sure a lot of you can see, a silent brain is a very useful thing to practice. And a big part of that is, like we were talking about earlier, like when you stop engaging with the brain, because in the silent illumination technique, that's where you also get a lot of that, like you're not moving, right? You're not going to move your body during that. So no matter what the brain throws up, pain, itch, thought, whatever, it's irrelevant. And so by showing the brain you're not going to pay attention to it anymore, it shuts up. And that is such a useful skill to learn. Alex, so I find I get wrapped into the urge to perform compulsions around recovery when I watch your content. How can I shift this approach? It's something I encourage people to do a lot. And so think about this with like books too. Books, videos on recovery, all of that kind of stuff. Really making mental health about something else, just like you would with physical fitness. Like we know, like research shows one of the best ways for people to stay consistent with a physical fitness practice is to not make it about things like losing weight. It's like losing weight, trying to look better, right? Because you're like, oh, I don't like the way I look. I want to change it. I don't like the weight I'm at. I want to change it. Those are really ineffective approaches to take. And same applies to mental health. If it's like, oh, I don't like these thoughts, I want to change them. I don't like this feeling, I want to change it. If you're approaching it from like, I've got to fix this thing, that's actually a big part of the problem. And so making it about something you want to do more of. So like in physical fitness, it's like saying, you know, I want to run a 5K race. Okay, and so if I want to do that, what are the skills I need to practice? So same in mental fitness. It's actually looking at the things that you want to do more of in life and making it about that. So it's like, I want to start my own business. And right now that's difficult because I don't think I'm good enough. I don't think I deserve it. I avoid talking to people, and my business idea would involve lots of talking to people. Then that we start to see all of the things we want to change. Be like, okay, if my business idea involves talking to people and I avoid that right now, I'm going to do a bunch of exercises to get over that social anxiety, but I'm doing it for a purpose that I'm going to keep in my life. And so actually then when we're looking at books and things like that, books, videos, what we actually want to do is spend that time and energy on books and videos and other resources related to that thing we really want to do in life. So I get that urge, oh, I better go watch a video to make sure, be certain about recovery skills. What we want to do there is actually go and watch a video about business planning and then immediately turn that into an actual business plan that we are then going to take to the bank for a loan or something like that. Shift the focus to those things that actually take us where we want to go. I need to fix the bad thing. It actually holds us back, even though we think it's going to be the thing that helps us move ahead. Brains. So enjoy, Alex, enjoy doing those things. Even though I will miss your views on my videos, I will be okay with it. Kai Kai, I should embrace fear, if you want to. But what about listening to music or watching TV and your brain throws uncertainties at you? Brains like to do that. You can't embrace it during that, right? Oh, because it takes away from what you're doing. I would wonder what that means to embrace it. Like an exercise I often give people is to like just sit and listen to music or just watch the TV, and because that's the thing we want to do. Yeah, like again, running to talk with the person in the street, like that's the compulsion. Even if you say like the person in the street shouting, "You're an alligator," and you're like, "Oh, now I have to go and accept that I'm an alligator." Well, no, that's the compulsion. Right? You don't have to listen to the person in the street. The thing, like by staying there and watching the movie, what actually comes up is that the brain is then afraid, like because you're risking it. The brain's like, well, you haven't proved you're not a alligator. Are you just going to sit here and watch a movie and not disprove that? And so that's the fear that we actually get to work on, right? By doing the thing we value, we show the brain, no, like I can do the thing that I care about. The sixth movement, how do I stop mental compulsions? So yeah, meditation is a great way to, sit down. Like meditation is a workout where you get to sit down and learn how to not do compulsions. And so yeah, there is, I call the basics of being. There's a course now on the toolkit site. So the toolkitstore.com, it's free. You can just sign up, and it is a series of audio guides for meditation. There's 10 right now, but soon, so there'll be 2 more rounds of it to work up to having 20. And they are to take people through the process, right? Within a month, if you did one each day, eventually, to just go from not knowing how to meditate at all. The first round takes you through basic movements. And then the next round starts to put those basic movements together. And by the end, you'll be able to just sit down for 30 minutes with a timer, nothing else, and just meditate. So that I find is huge. That's a way to learn how to stop doing the stuff we're doing in our heads. And then the other way is just like a lot of what we've been talking about. Like right there, noticing, like doing the thing we want to do, like watching a movie, noticing the brain throw up a thought, and be like, oh yeah, but I want to watch the movie right now. And so a lot of the times that's about working on the stuff we like. Because maybe the thing the brain throws up while you're watching the movie is like, this movie is boring. Why don't you think about that presentation you got to make next week? Why don't you think about what you're going to go and eat later? Why don't you think about that? Oh, like maybe pull out your phone. Like maybe you got a message from like a dating app or something like that. That's exactly the same. And so if you choose to follow the stuff your brain throws up when you like it, it is very difficult not to do that when you dislike it. So when people start working on mental compulsions, one thing I always encourage people to do is to actually start learning how to cut out mental compulsions around stuff you like that is not distressing, because that's where the brain learned to chase this stuff. Alze, you said hello from Pakistan, hello from Canada, welcome. Sujal, you said, I'm doing recovery. I've eliminated many compulsions. Now I'm cutting out rumination, but I got into a major rumination theme right now that I'm doing my work, but not properly. That kind of one will come up often, like, oh, like you're not doing the thing right. And this is where we get, and I find this can feel so risky. And I kind of throw up my hands. This is how I always thought of it when my brain throws up that, like, oh, you're not doing this right. You're going to do it wrong. Implied in that is bad things will happen because you didn't do it right. And this is where we get to practice accepting that. Like we were just talking about there, when the brain's like, oh, like, but aren't you going to go prove that you're not an alligator? Aren't you going to prove that you didn't do it wrong? And we say, oh, maybe I did get it wrong. I'm not going to do it right. and to really embrace that. So that's what helped me the most. I had to work on that a lot because my brain wanted to get things right in all sorts of ways. So like risking doing it wrong. And so an exercise you can do around that is to look for things that, again, like things that you like to do right. So for example, for me, that was like I had all these ideas about the right way to do writing. So like I'm writing books or stories or something like that. It's like, oh, like we need the right environment and the right notebooks and the right pens and the right place, etc. Is to then go and write in wrong places, right in the places where I thought it would, I'd be so distracted, it'd be terrible to write and so on, and like risk it. So find those things that you like to do right, that are easy to do right, and practice doing them wrong. It's super fun. Like even with menus, that was another one. Like I would always spend all this time like trying to get the right thing on the menu because of all like, oh, I can't eat something that's gonna make me feel bad, and I've got to eat, it's got to be the right price and all that kind of stuff. Just randomly pick, grab a menu, be like, and decide in advance. I'm gonna pick like the fourth thing down from the top on the second page, and just do it. And it pisses the brain off so much. And that's why it's such a good exercise. So Elza, you asked about rumination. Yep. So like we were just talking about there, meditation is a great way to practice, and then working on cutting out rumination that we think is good and normal and so on. Timer. Any tips for cutting out more core compulsions? I've more or less got over the diagnosable OCD, but having a hard time with the more normal ones, like talking to myself about certain things, etc. I find the great place to start is like you're seeing there, like just recognizing it, recognizing that it's the same, and that like this is the stuff I found so useful to tackle. Seeing you're sitting there, like seeing that it's not about the topic, right? It's not about ruminating in my head about, oh, like, did I kill somebody? Because I thought it was fine to ruminate in my head about like, oh, where is my wallet right now? Or, oh, like, am I doing the right thing with my work or something like that? Or planning a presentation in my head or having conversations with people in my head. And I would just see that as like preparation or something like that. It's about recognizing that the topic is irrelevant. The problem is that I think it's good to spend time and energy on that. So how do we start to change that? So it's about noticing it like you've done there, but then practicing, noticing when that comes up. And I found what helps so much is coming back to values and trusting in my values. And that's where we kind of make this big shift throughout our lives, of getting proactive, of giving instead of getting, and really understanding how that works. So that'd be one of the things I'd say, like you already see the pattern. So now how do you start to cut that stuff out? But then asking like, so what supports are going to help you do that? And that's often about seeing like, how do I get more proactive with particular things? Like how do I say, look, brain, I don't do this anymore. So like, things like that. Like, so with presentations, for example, I used to or any kind of thing I was going to do, talking to somebody else, or like if I wanted to ask somebody something, I would just have the conversation over and over and over again in my head. So I really just had to commit, like I don't have conversations in my head. And so what then has to change? So then it was things like, oh, okay, if there's ever something like that, I must immediately go and email somebody, right? So I'm not gonna have the conversation in my head to get it right before I ask the question. I'm gonna do it right away. Or something I'm creating, I'm going to use values. I'm just going to come back to that. It's not about getting a feeling of getting it right. It's like, did I give the things that I identified in my values are the things I want to give? And if I did it, then it's done. If I didn't do it, it's about actions, not about brain stuff. So enjoy cutting out those patterns and doing the things you want to do. Oh, Lewis, welcome. Oh, thank you for joining in. Handshakes to you. Little Miss Beats, you asked about pain there. To that question, I would say it's possible. Oh, Timer, you're welcome. And Leah. Ethan the Wanderer. Thank you. Oh, thanks for sharing that with your mom. See, you were already onto this. It's super important. Oh, Alex, you are a business major. Enjoy getting that business started and put yourself out there. Oh, thank you, Miles. Alize, yes, the meditation course on the Toolkit store, the basics of being is for free. I think it's really important that meditation should be free. These apps that charge you for meditation, that's not cool in the meditation world. Also, they really hold you back on purpose because, like, so this is the key. The Toolkit course, the whole point is that by the end of it, you do not need like a course or an app or anything like that to meditate. So yeah, there'll be 2 more weeks of exercises that'll come out in the months ahead. Yeah, like the whole idea that you need an app to meditate is specifically designed just to like make VCs money. Though like Headspace, like their whole business model depends on you being bad at meditation. So they are not teaching you how to meditate. They want you to be bad at meditation because then you have to keep using the apps and then you have to keep signing up. So then they get to say they have all of these users and then they make money off of you. That's the T on meditation apps. United US, what should we do so anxiety doesn't become an obstacle in life? Many times I feel that I can't think and speak so easily and quickly with anxiety. And so what's wrong with that? So what's wrong with speaking the way you're speaking? Anxiety doesn't have to be a barrier. But if we believe it's a barrier because we're like, ooh, anxiety is making me, act differently and I shouldn't act differently, therefore anxiety is a barrier. So it can really help to actually remove that should. And so, yeah, why not speak differently? Super committee. That I'm not a big fan of committees, but I would join a super committee. Said, I feel like OCD has already built the walls. I don't need to work on compulsions, but now I think more negative because of OCD's impact. You might still need to work on compulsions. Evan said, doing quite well at accepting the uncertainty with my OCD, but what are some compulsions I may not be noticing in harm OCD, especially self-harm intrusions? So one of the things that I always encourage people to look at if they're running into the self-harm fears is to look very generally in their life at control. So yeah, 2 things: control and how do we practice being ourselves? And do we see ourselves as passive in relation to brain stuff or in relation to other stuff in our lives? Because often, like, what's going on with the self-harm fear is just like, oh no, what if this thing takes control of me and makes me do this thing I don't want to do? And it'll interfere with the stuff I'm doing in life. And so what we really want to start to do is show the brain, no, like I am in charge here. I notice brain stuff and I make choices. And so that's what I would really start to look at. Like, how do you position power in life? Like, do you see things like thoughts as like having control over you? Or are they just like random thing in the street and I get to choose what I do? And so like shifting that back, right? You starting to show the brain that you're the one in charge here. It throws up stuff and you choose what you do. And oh, my computer, wild computer. We'll try and run through things. I know it's after 12. I've been streaming on Twitch more, so now my stream length is just like growing longer. See, through practice, we improve endurance. Boris, you asked how can you're asking about tips about scheduling a day. You found yourself doing lots of compulsions. If something goes wrong, hating yourself for failing on a schedule. So yeah, it might be really useful not to do a schedule, but to instead, what I find really helpful is just to identify. So 3 things. What are the actions I do that I value today? What are the actions? So then let's say, so what are the actions I do that I value? Then what are the actions that I know are compulsions? But then in between them, what are the actions that are just off the path? That if I start to do them, I know it's going to take me into the compulsions. And so those are the actions that it's really useful to cut out. Like I'm not going to start doing those things that are just off the path. I'm going to stick to those things that are valuable. But it's not about like, oh, I've got to follow this rigid schedule. It might be about saying, oh, there's like 3 things I want to do today that I really value. And so first of all, like I'm going to do one of them right now. So right away, I'm going to do one of these things that's going to give the things I want to give. And yeah, you may like pick a time when you want to do the others, but like you might still have a lot of flexibility around them. And so I find like just getting good at that. So it's really a shift from following a rigid schedule to going for impact. So saying like, how do I want to make an impact in the world? How do I want to give something? And that's what I'm going to celebrate. And then, yeah, if I do like a bunch of other stuff during the day, I'm not going to do compulsions around that and judge it. And then we just get better and better at it. And so it's kind of like make it easy at first. So like give yourself that possibility to like have an impact each day. So maybe it's just one thing that you say like, this is success. If I do this, I'm successful. And then maybe you do that for a week. And then like, okay, now this week I'm going to do 2 things that really have an impact. And you just grow and grow and grow from there. It's so much easier to do the things we value if like we're setting it up so we are successful. This idea that like you've got to hate on a thing and judge ourselves, and then we're gonna like somehow that's gonna help us do stuff. That does not happen. So set it up so you can like be successful today. Like, wow, like I did that thing I really wanted to do. That's awesome. Like now tomorrow I'm gonna do more of the thing I really want to do. And you keep going from there. Yo, Lewis, the second book, so there were, yeah, so like I sent out some book pitches at kind of like the start of the lockdown pandemic. And they ended up, well, like they only went to 2 publishers. And those publishers were like, nah, we're not into them. And then, so I've actually been writing a novel. So that's not, so novels are a bit different. With a novel, you have to complete the full novel first, whereas like nonfiction books, you put together a proposal and send it out. So right now, yeah, so I'm writing, I'm really enjoying it, but there's no second book on the way. But I'm making more and more of the online courses. So in terms of getting mental health tools out, at least right now, like I'm going to be sharing mental health tools more so through the online courses, because it's really easy to put them together. There's a bunch of interesting ones on the way. And 2, I would say to anybody out there, if you're a mental health professional, if you want to share about your recovery experience and skills, feel free to get in touch. Like I'm totally looking for other people who can help with creating courses, so we can get like more skills, more perspectives on how to do recovery out there. So yeah, feel free to get in touch. But yeah, so right now, that's what's happening book-wise. Is there's not a next nonfiction book in the works, but I have tons of like I still want to make the books, like the book, just because one publisher was like, nah, we're not into it. I still think it's a super important book, so it'll get made at some point because I've already started to interview people. So yeah, it'll be it won't be OCD specific. Just like my last book was not. My last book was for anybody with brains. Justin, you said, what do you do when you constantly feel the need to help people when you're focusing on improving yourself and fixing your problems? It helps me. So like something, so thinking of my own work there, I find it super important not to help people. And that maybe that sounds weird at first, but I find it's really important that the focus is on building a great tool, because if we're trying to help people, then we're trying to control other people and make them do things, and that quickly just becomes a compulsion. So I always encourage people to shift the focus to like making an awesome thing. Like think about a baker. Yeah, like maybe you really want people to enjoy something. Okay, well, the way you're going to do that is by really making something great. So actually shifting the focus to your skills rather than like trying to force somebody to enjoy something. Just shoving cake in their mouth. I want you to enjoy this. That's not a good approach. Sam, you asked about tension headaches. So do you have any tips on how to deal with anxiousness that gives tension headaches? Like there's one thing that when I look at every day that I can't avoid it, it gives me a tension headache. I find it really useful to start to approach things like pain and anxiety as the same, actually. Because if we're doing compulsions around the physical things that pop up, that'll just be what the brain likes to throw up. So really starting to like see how to cut out the compulsions around this. So it sounds like you're seeing, like when you see that thing, there's compulsions happening there, which are then like, it's not giving you a tension headache. It can really help to see that we're the one that does the stuff that creates the tension headache. And so that's useful stuff to cut out. Wonderson, you asked about the goals. No, like a lot of these are books, actually. They are not, they're not my goals. Those are video courses over here. These are books and this is other stuff that's going to go up on the toolkit site, like merchandise. Like there's going to be coming out with a whole line of like mental health shirts and stuff like that. And so those are ideas for that. So they tend to be more, and you could see those as goals, but keeping track of stuff that's getting created. And then some of it's also just stuff for you. Just reading through here. Yeah, see, exactly. They're for you. Like Lewis, you just noticed, accept death or die trying. Yeah, notes like that are just for you. Yeah. You will die trying to accept death. Yeah, everybody. Oh, thank you. Yeah, so much for the comments, but also see, yeah, people bringing up a lot of great points. And so, yeah, why don't we? Like, yeah, it's like 12:15 now. We should get back into our days, our evenings, our mornings, doing the awesome things, not listening to the person shouting in the street. And so maybe that's a good note to end on. So thank you to everybody for coming together today. Thank you as always for sharing about this stuff that happens in our heads, and really, yeah, getting engaged with it, right? So much of this is that like we can talk about it. We can have a conversation about it. We can touch it. We can discuss it in the same way that we would anything else. So thank you for coming together and being part of that. And yeah, this week, like really, if you was to do one thing, like really notice the stuff the brain is throwing up as some random dude shouting in the street. And sometimes he's going to shout stuff you like, and sometimes he's going to shout stuff you dislike. You don't have to engage with him at all, but be aware of that, because if you're engaging with him when he says stuff you like, it's going to be very difficult not to run to the window when he says stuff you don't like. So, oh, Miles, thank you. Yeah, there's some really cool, we got some really cool artists working on the t-shirts and stuff like that that are going to be coming out. So it's so much of it is like we do here, like being able to talk about mental health in like a cool, interesting way. So I'll definitely keep you posted on that. That's coming very soon. And yeah, thank you to everyone. Heart emojis, the works, bow emojis. Have an excellent end to the weekend and a start to the week. Take care of yourselves out there. Thank you so much, everybody.